What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to start doing things a little bit differently. So this is something that I've talked about before that I want to start implementing going forward. So once a month I want to do a breakdown essentially of the things that I read and watched in a month. And once I start getting back into reading books, I'm going to start, talking about the books that I read as well. But I want to keep these kind of short, so I'm not going to go too deep into each of the things that I read. But I'm going to let's start with digital manga, and then we'll go into physical manga, and then I'll close it out with some movies that I watched. But we'll keep it kind of short. So yeah, let's jump right into this. So a series that I read like 4 chapters of it, is a series called My Favorite VTuber is Scary IRL. So I read like the first 4 chapters of the series. It was interesting, I guess. It's on the Square Enix manga app, and I kind of liked it. I mean, if it gets a physical release at some point in time, I may pick it up, check it out. I don't think it's that far yet, but it was kind of cute and whatnot. I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna, spend too much time trying to keep up with it because it is on the Square Enix app, and I kind of don't, not a huge fan of Square Enix at the moment, to be honest. But that's not a bad series. Pretty much this dude is a delivery guy, and he takes food to this lady who's like super like hardcore shut in, and it kind of turns out that she is actually the voice of his favorite VTuber, but she's like super duper tall and like super duper imposing in real life, but her whole thing is that she's actually like really shy and doesn't know how to communicate with people, kind of like a Comey can't communicate sort of situation, or even like Hitomi-chan is shy with strangers, where they come across like kind of like mysterious or even like angry or whatever, and it's just that like they're super shy and they don't know how to talk to people. I've continued Chainsaw Man. I mean, every single month that I do one of these catch-up videos, it's always going to be Chainsaw Man's going to be in there some way or another. But really quickly, before we get too far into the video, the reason that I wanted to do these is that when I was doing my tour video, I kept running into the situation where I would say like Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4 is on the TBR shelf, and what I decided this year that I want to do is that I want to put a massive dent into my TBR shelf, and each month I want to get at the very least 10 volumes of manga read each month. So in order to do that, I'm going to start, for the most part, like not dropping a huge volume of videos. So far this year, I've only dropped 2. This is going to be number 3. I dropped my tour video, and then I also dropped my favorite things 2024 video. Both of them were gigantic videos, and I'm really hoping to keep this one under 20 minutes. And yeah, pretty much going forward, I'm going to start dropping a lot less content, but I want to do these at least once a month, starting in February. This will be the first one ever, for monthly rewind January and then monthly rewind February. But for the most part, like, I want to have baseline at least 10 volumes read every single month, so that I can start really putting a major dent into my TBR. Because there's some stuff where like I read the first volume like 2 or 3 years ago and then just never read volume 2, because I'm always in like, oh, I gotta read the next thing for the next video, the next thing for the next video. And I think I'm in a place now where like I really don't need to do that anymore. Like, I used to do that because I felt like I had to be on the grind so that I could partner. And now that I am partnered with YouTube, I don't really see a need to be on the grind like that anymore. I feel like now I can kind of like take a step back and start, making like just more nuanced content and start spending a lot more time just doing things that I want to do. And that's part of the reason that it took me almost a month to drop that favorite things video, because like I've been editing that whole time, but I put a lot of time and effort into that video, and I want to start doing that going forward. It's just read, and then I'll do these kinds of videos where I'll kind of tell you all, about all the stuff that I read. So yeah, let's get back into it. I'll tell you, so Chainsaw Man, I always read Chainsaw Man. I don't want to say too much about certain things, because like I keep up with Chainsaw Man, and I don't want to start spoiling what's going on right now, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that probably are like physical readers, that only read the digital, they only read the physical manga, that aren't, reading it digitally, so they don't know what the hell is going on at this current time in the digital, and I don't want to say, oh, this thing just happened, and they're like 30, 40 chapters behind what happened, and I just spoiled, like a huge thing for them. So yeah, I mean, I pretty much always read Chainsaw Man. I finished Ankoku Delta. I talked about that in my favorite things video. Ankoku Delta is a series that came out last year that I absolutely loved. It's pretty much these people, these beings called Deltans that exist on a sort of plane that exists over our world, and they get a sort of energy from humanity, and that energy powers their world called Delta. It ran for 35 chapters, and I read like the last 2 or 3 chapters. I think in January. I think I read like the last 2 or 3 chapters. I think it ended in January because, yeah, it ended at like the first like couple of weeks of January. I think they dropped the last like 2-3 chapters of Ankoku Delta. It really breaks my heart because I came to love that series. And yeah, I talked about it in 2 different videos. I talked about it in my favorite things video, and also talked about it in a first impressions video. So yeah, that's something that I thoroughly enjoyed. All right, so something that I'm keeping up with that is just, in my opinion, gotten progressively better, and I feel like I may do another video about, is Ichi the Witch. Ichi the Witch is a series that I think people should be reading. If you're not reading it, please jump on the Shonen Jump app, or even like the Manga Plus app, dude, and start reading Ichi the Witch, because that series is incredible. I said it in my favorite things video that I think Ichi the Witch, there's no way in hell Ichi the Witch doesn't get both a physical and an anime adaptation. It's there's no way in hell, in my opinion, that it doesn't get both of those things. Like, it's definitely getting a physical, because it is doing extremely well. The fact that Astro Royale is getting a physical, I mean, I think that Ichi the Witch is definitely getting a physical. It might be a little bit further down the line, since I only think it's up to like chapter 20 at this point in time. They're probably waiting for it to get to maybe like 30 or something, and then we're going to see like an announcement for a physical release in English of, Ichi the Witch, which I think would be incredible. Definitely deserves a physical release, because that series is just off the wall bonkers. It's seriously, like, from when it starts, like, even like the first chapter is super off the wall and super wild, and it's just one of those series that, in my opinion, has just gotten so much better, and the artwork has just improved like tenfold, because these are 2 artists that, have been in the game for a while, that have that are essentially like heavy hitters or whatever, like, they're not spring chickens, I mean, they didn't just come into it, they've been around. So yeah, I think that they're going to be able to, continue to grow as creators, and to, take this manga to the next plane, and it's just going to get bigger and better. And I think definitely want to see, I can't wait to see where it is, like at 100 chapters. Once that series hits like 100 chapters, I think it's going to be in a completely different place than where it is now, but it's going to be such a wild series, I think, by the time it gets to that point. But yeah, I guess we'll see. I'm also keeping up with Ruri Dragon. The first volume of it just dropped. I got it on the shelf. This is one of those series that I talked about. I've talked about this a few times. This was in my, I think in my favorite things video for 2023, if I'm not mistaken. But it's a solid manga. I can't wait to see, if it ends up becoming something different, like if Ruri at some point in time starts to maybe use her dragon powers to fight, evil or something. I think that would be really rad. Who knows if it'll happen or not? Or who knows if it's just going to stay like a teen comedy, but it would be cool to see it, kind of expand and become something else in the future. I think that would be pretty rad, but I don't know, I guess we'll see. And I've also been reading Nightlight Hounds. I'm pretty much caught up with that series. I read those chapters as they drop, and I think it's like 8-9 chapters so far, but really good manga. Definitely read it. I really would hate for that series to get canceled, because it sucks when good series get canceled. Like Drunk Bullet got canceled, and that was super disappointing. It ran for like 25 chapters and then pretty much got the axe, and that was kind of heartbreaking, because that creator really cared about that series, really cared about that world, and he was pretty heartbroken, I think, when that was ended, because he had all these plans about what he was going to do with it and where he was going to take it. And some of these creators, or all of these creators, really, I'd say, really want their stories to thrive. They all want their babies to be able to flourish, and unfortunately sometimes that just doesn't happen. But hell, maybe, in the long term they'll come back with something else, something stronger, and it'll go for a lot longer and become like a way bigger series. But unfortunately, Drunk Bullet didn't last. But I'd love to see Nightlight Hounds keep going. I talked about it in a video. I had done a segment about it in my favorite things video, but I ended up actually cutting that segment to trim that video down because it was like 3 hours, before edits. It was like 3 hours, and I did cut a lot of stuff out. And so there's a few things that actually like ended up just being left on the cutting room floor because that video just got like way too long, and I just started like cutting things here and there. I mean, if it's not manga or whatever, physical or digital, I'm just going to remove it. So I ended up just cutting a lot of stuff. And ultimately, I did cut Nightlight Hounds, I think, I'm pretty sure, from the video. But I did talk about it in that video. I talked about it for like 4 or 5 minutes. And I think ultimately, it just felt like it was going on for too long, the digital part of it. So I ended up getting axed, unfortunately. I also keep up with Dan because I love Dan. I read the first volume of it physically, and then I couldn't wait for volume 2, which is the same thing that happened to me when I first started reading Chainsaw Man in 2020. I read the first volume of Chainsaw Man in 2020 and like could not wait for volume 2, so I started reading it on the Shonen Jump Viz app, and then the same thing happened to me with Dan. When I received the first volume of Dan in the mail, I poured through it and read the whole thing in like a sitting, and immediately I immediately jumped on the Shonen Jump Viz app and just tore through the manga and caught up extremely quickly to where it was at the time. And obviously now it's a lot further along because I was like probably like a year ago now that like I finally caught up, with the series and whatnot. And yeah, I think it's still going really strong. I don't think that it's lost any of its integrity. I think it's still as bonkers, as insane of a series as it was, when it first started coming out. So that's something that I deeply cherish as well. That's one of my favorite series of all time, you know what I mean? Like, given how much it escalates and how much it changes from, where it was in the beginning to where it is at present, and how many characters have come into the fold and how massive the gang has grown. And I don't want to say obviously too much for anybody that is a physical only reader, because I don't want to start spoiling your experience with this series. And we're about to enter into the Evil Eye arc for the anime onlys, and that arc is going to be insane. I'm super excited to see where that's going to go. Mad just keeps getting better and better. Mad I talked about in my favorite things 2024 video. I just read the new chapter today, which I'm probably not going to say too much about here because obviously spoilers, but that's a series that I keep up with and deeply love. Mad is absolutely insane. It is literally Fire Punch. Like, it's Fire Punch, dude, through and through. It feels like in some way or another it was inspired by Fire Punch. Wouldn't be surprised if that is actually true or not, because it is such a wild story, like with these aliens that come like on a meteor or something, kind of like A Quiet Place, and just wreak havoc all over the world. And our lead is a one-armed man named John, and we follow him as he goes on one of the most insane adventures that one human being can undergo. And you see some of the most incredible pieces of art that are brought to life on the pages of the story. I don't want to say too much about it. I do have, I have a video, first impressions video, where I talk a little bit more about it if you want to, watch that. And obviously I don't want to say too much to save some time here, but absolutely bonkers series. If you want to check out something that, like I said, is essentially like a sort of a Fire Punch, though I think Fire Punch is still more insane than anything I've maybe ever read. It's definitely, it could eventually, get to that point of just being like, what in the hell is going on? But yeah, dude, it's a solid read. So I'm also keeping up with Drama Queen, which I've enjoyed quite a bit. It's definitely a series that has triggered some people. I'm going to talk about it in a first impressions video at some point in time. I want a little bit more of it to come out so I can get like a real, I guess, idea of what it's about, because at first a lot of people thought that it was one thing, and I don't want to get too into that, but a lot of people thought it was one thing, and it's kind of feeling like it's shaping up to be something a little bit different than, kind of like the direction that it was initially headed in. But I've enjoyed it personally. Pretty much there is this dude and this girl, and the girl eats like aliens from outer space, and there's kind of like a sort of class thing that the series revolves around, and some people didn't really see it as that. They saw it as something completely different than a class thing. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting situation there, but I've enjoyed it so far. I've read every chapter of it, and yeah, I mean, once like maybe like it gets to chapter 10-ish, I do want to talk about it in like a first impressions video once I have like a real idea of, what it's shaping up to be. I definitely want to talk about it. And then we got Astro Baby. I love Astro Baby. I'm a huge fan of Shiro Moriya. I think Shiro Moriya is one of the best creators that I've personally ever read. I love their other series, Soloist in a Cage. So getting to read Astro Baby has been an absolute blast. I feel like it's just getting better and better. And I don't know how long it's going to run for. I don't know if it was planned to be a series that goes on for a long time, or if it's kind of like Soloist in a Cage, where it's a series that's going to run for like 30 chapters or 35 chapters or whatever, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. Really enjoyed it so far. I talked about it in a first impressions video, and really excited to see the future of that series, given that, it's pretty much this sort of like Parasite invasion of the body snatchers sort of situation with this thing called a Cooper that infects this newborn baby, and there's this kid named Billy who essentially tries to protect this Cooper because it can take him to the woman he loves, the kid being Billy, the woman the kid loves. The Cooper can take him to her and essentially maybe, return her to her normal human self. So, yeah, I don't know, I guess we'll see. And the last digital one that I got to talk about is Kagurabachi. I pretty much keep up with Kagurabachi. I've been reading that series since it debuted, since the first chapter dropped, since people were making the Kagura billionaire jokes. Like right when it was coming out and everybody was making fun of it. I've been reading it since then. Love the series. I have the first 2 volumes of it that are out. I don't reread things, once I read it on the Manga Plus app, I don't reread it. I just collect them to support. This is one of the series that I really care about, that I've really enjoyed so far, so I'm definitely supporting it. Every time a volume drops, I pick them up. Alright, let's talk about some physical manga. Alright, so I'm missing 2 of them because I don't know where the hell I put them. But we're going to start with Honey Trap Shared House. I read the first volume of this. This is okay. I gave this a 3.5 out of 5 on the rating scale. And that's what I rate things up to, is 5. I know some people do up to like 10 or whatever, but I do up to 5. And my rating of this was 3.5. Pretty much there is a honeypot, like this dude who is a spy sets up this house to be a honeypot, and a bunch of women that are also spies, including this girl right here, who is a girl that knew our protagonist from when he was a child. They knew each other when they were kids, and they were going to get married or whatever when they were kids, but it just kind of doesn't really happen. I think they move apart, and much later on in life, they both end up being spies or whatever. And like I've seen that same premise in other series as well. Can't remember what it was. There's another series too where like it had like a super similar premise, but yeah, they end up at the shared house, and it becomes kind of like a harem situation pretty quickly. I'm gonna be reading volume 2, and there's another series called Please Put Them On, Tamamina-san or whatever. I'm gonna be reading that, but yeah, this is okay. I'm gonna read it anyway, just because it's kind of, like I'm a fan of trash. I've said that before on this channel. I'm a fan of trash, and this is definitely trashy, but I've definitely read way worse. I read series that like I couldn't even finish, but I was able to finish this. I just thought it was kind of mediocre, but I'm going to check out volume 2 and see how I feel about it. Alright, so this is something that got a 5 out of 5 from me because it is Junji Ito. This is actually my 3rd time reading Uzumaki, and the reason that I'm reading Uzumaki is that I'm going to be talking about it in a gigantic Junji Ito video that I've been promising for like 3 years. I've literally been talking about doing that video for like 3 years now, but it's finally, happening. I read Uzumaki and then also read another Junji Ito story book towards that video. So far, I've read 3 to completion. I'm in the middle of number 4, which is Tomie. Currently reading Tomie, and I'm kind of going down the line by the release years in English of Junji Ito's works. Once I get to like the halfway point, I'm going to record what is essentially going to be part 1 of that video. And then once I finish the rest of the series, I'll record the other part of it. And so I may end up editing part 1 of that video. It's all going to be one huge video, but I'll like edit part 1 and then I'll make that available for my patrons. And then, once the whole thing is complete, I'll make it available for everyone, because I don't want to drop parts on YouTube. I want to drop like one giant video, however long it's going to be, whether it's like an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever. But yeah, I love Junji Ito, I love Uzumaki. Like I said, this is my third time going through Uzumaki, and even 3 times deep, it has not lost its touch, in my opinion. It's still a 5 out of 5. It's still a masterpiece. It's still one of the greatest things that I've personally ever read. Please don't watch the anime. Please do not watch the anime. It is awful. I hated it. I talked about it in my favorite things 2024 video. I felt like I had to talk about it because I'm a fan. I'm a huge fan of Junji Ito, so I felt like I had to talk about it and just share my disappointment in it. But yeah, I don't think I need to tell anybody about Uzumaki. I mean, I'm sure we all know what Uzumaki is with the spirals, and Kirie Woshima, who watches just the insanity unfold next to her boyfriend Shuichi. So yeah, on to the next one. All right, next up we got I Want to Do Bad Things with You, Volume 2. This is such an adorable series, dude. I read the first volume of it, loved it. Had to read Volume 2, loved Volume 2. I have Volume 3 in a cart. I haven't picked it up yet. I want to put like a real dent into my TBR before I pick up more manga. Like I have like a lot of stuff that I want to pick up, but I'm like kind of pumping the brakes. I'm like forcing myself not to like just keep throwing away money. But this is a super adorable series. This girl right here is kind of like a square. She's like a lame, I guess, if you will. Doesn't really have much of a personality, but yeah, she's like a pushover or whatever anybody wants her to do, she does it. She really doesn't have much of a backbone. That is until she meets this dude right there, who is like weak, frail, or whatever, but he does whatever he wants. He doesn't let anybody tell him no, and she ends up falling in love with him, I guess, if you will, or at least like his sort of like devil may care sort of attitude, and she really comes to enjoy that about him, and they become like really close, really good friends. And you kind of start to see that he might start to see her as more of a woman in this volume, but then again, he's also kind of like dense, like guys in these sorts of like rom-com stories are always like super dense. So like he's also super dense and doesn't realize that she has feelings for him, even though like they're right there in the open. So yeah, this is a super cute volume. I gave this a 4 out of 5, and yeah, definitely look forward to reading more. I kind of feel like it's going to turn into a harem, because they're in volume 3, on the cover of volume 3 there's like another girl as well. So I don't know, there's already a girl from his past, and then there's like another girl that's also going to be a part of it, I guess. So I don't know, I guess we'll see what happens with the series. All right, we got Black Lagoon Volume 2. I gave this a 4 out of 5. This is a series that I just all around love. One of my favorite manga series of all time. One of my favorite anime series of all time, sorry. But I am starting to love the manga. I'm currently, as of making of this video, I just read Volume 4, so I'm currently on Volume 5. But towards this video, I've read Volumes 2 and 3. And Volume 2 is, I think, the one with the kids. I think it is the one with the little creepy kids. But yeah, I was a fan of the anime. Like I used to love the anime. I've watched the anime through probably like 3 times, and I kind of want to rewatch the anime again now, since like I've been reading the manga. It's like giving me nostalgia, and it's making me want to go back through and rewatch the anime, because just, I don't know, man, it was such a vibe. The anime was so incredible. It was one of the best things that I've personally ever seen, and I grew up with it, given that I grew up, in like the millennial era. Like I am a millennial, so I kind of grew up in that era, like the mid 2000s or whatever, and that was like one of the anime series that I would always just watch. I would put on just random episodes too. Like I used to put on the Tokyo arc or whatever, like, or not, it wasn't Tokyo, right? It was the one where they go to Japan. I would just put that on for like no reason at all, or the one where like Revy and Rock, like kind of make up and they have like the cigarette, kiss. Like I used to just watch that episode too for like no real reason. Like I would just watch random episodes because it was just my comfort show, like I loved and still do love Black Lagoon. And yeah, but I did give it a 5 out of 5. Yeah, classic series, dude. Read it if you just want like action-packed, blood-soaked violence, just non-stop shenanigans, lots of trash talking, great characters all around, everybody involved in it. All the characters are so much fun to be around, and it just gets progressively more insane as well. I also read Apparently Disillusioned Adventurers Will Save the World. I read volume 2 of the manga. It's based on a light novel. I don't know where that is right now. I kind of like searched my room and I couldn't find it. That's probably like what happens when you end up with just way too much manga, and then you start to lose things. But I read volume 2 of it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Really enjoyed it. It really reminds me of like Konosuba, but like a more adult, more serious sort of Konosuba, with these characters who were in different parties, and the parties they were in essentially betrayed them. And one girl I think is like left for dead, another dude is robbed by his party, and just like really awful stuff like that. Like they start to just like not trust anybody at all. And I enjoyed volume 2. I got volume 3 on the TBR shelf. So once I kind of get around to it, I'll start reading volume 3, and it's only 6 volumes that were made available in English, and I think it's like it goes on for a lot longer in the light novels, but I really don't feel like reading. I don't really feel like reading the light novels. So once I finish it, once I get through volume 6, I'll probably just call it a day there. Another one too that I read is Heart Gear Volume 3, and I don't know where that is. I don't know where I put my volume 3 of Heart Gear, so I'm not going to be able to show you that one either. But either way, I'll put both of these right here on the side. On one of these sides, I'll put that volume that I did read. And Heart Gear is a series that I love. I talked about Heart Gear, I think, at least a few times. I've talked about it in at least like 2 or 3 different videos. The first volume of Heart Gear is a goddamn masterpiece. Like, the way that it opens and the way that it just tells like a story. Like I remember I compared it to like Inglourious Bastards, where like there's like this calm before the storm, and there's like this rustic sort of like laid back life, and little by little it starts to turn into something completely different. And at some point in time, this girl's like Anchor, her uncle, who is a robot, is taken out by another robot, and it's the thing that I want to compare it to is Nier Automata, because there's so many elements of it that seriously remind me so much of Nier Automata. Like once you get past the point of it, being a woman in like a skimpy outfit or whatever, being like in a French maid outfit, it's actually like a masterpiece of a game. Like I just went into it, like I was never going to play it for that reason, because like I just thought it was like a woman in like a maid outfit, and I was like, why the hell would I want to play this? But it's actually one of the most incredible, just heart-wrenching games that I've ever played in my life, and it literally broke my damned heart, but I loved every second of it, and the philosophical themes and whatnot of it are also present in Heart Gear. And as of the making of this video, I've actually read all the way through 4. That's all that's available right now in English. And then volume 5, I think, is the final volume of Heart Gear that will drop at some point in time this year. So yeah, I pretty much read everything. But as far as January goes, I only read volume 3 of Heart Gear. But yeah, absolutely loved it. And yeah, and then in February, I'll go into volume 4, I guess, if you will. But yeah, love Heart Gear, dude. If you haven't read Heart Gear, please do, especially now that volume 5 is going to drop. I feel like this is a great time to check it out, buy the first 4 volumes that are available, and just pour through it like in a sitting or 2 sittings or whatever, because it's one of those series that you're just not going to want to put down once you start reading it. Alright, so Black Lagoon volume 3, this I gave a 5 out of 5. This pretty much ends the story that started in volume 2 with the creepy kids that I'd mentioned, and that's one of the most like disheartening arcs of the story. And I think this is like, for me, the point, or just in general of the story, the point where it starts to take like kind of like a tonal shift, or like it is a series where there's just like run and gun, violence out the ass, like just non-stop, just hitting the fan, like everywhere you turn somebody's getting blown up, somebody's getting killed. It's just endless carnage. And then you get to the arc with these 2 kids who are assassins, and then you see what happened to them, what led them to be a part of this life, and it's super tragic. And it's kind of like the point, in my opinion, where like the story starts to take that turn, and though it does have this boundless carnage, this boundless blood and guts and whatnot, it's a lot more tragic. Like, it's not blood and guts and whatnot for the fun of it. Not all the time, though. It is, a large part of the time. Like it's fun and whatnot, but then there will be blood and guts and whatnot. But the person who's committing these horrible things hates themselves, or hates that they have to do it, or feels like they have to do it, like they don't have any other option. They're in this position where they feel like it's either them or me, and it's not. It's a facade, right? Like them wanting to commit all these horrible acts, is a facade to hide the fact that they're broken inside. And it starts to become more and more apparent as you consume the story. And that was how it was with the anime. And it's one of those things that I forgot about. I forgot like how dark the story actually is. Once you get beyond the guns and violence and all that stuff, the action, you see like some of these characters are really broken. Like Balalaika, I think, is a pretty broken character as well. Like she'll never show it, because she hides it all behind this like, tough as nails exterior, but she cares about her men, and that really comes into focus in this volume where I don't want to say what happens, but it really does come into play in this volume. And then Revi as well. Like Revi as a character is like super in your face, ready to go, revving to go. And when she has that questioned, she immediately just freaks the hell out, because she's hiding that there is more to her than just this, and she doesn't want that part of her to be known. And there's a lot of that in this story, and that's why I love Black Lagoon so much, dude. And that's why I love the anime so much, that it's just more than just violence. There's a reason for the violence, and a lot of it is, just trauma and pent up trauma that's just not resolved. And yeah, this is a 5-star volume. Alright, so next up we got Fragments of Horror by Junji Ito. So this is one of my favorite Ito collections. There's like a story in there that I'm not like a huge fan of, which is this woman who, or not so much a woman, but this character who collects artists or whatever, like uses artists to write her books. Like she tortures artists, takes, tortured artists to a whole new level by literally torturing artists. That's like kind of like the only story that I'm like not too huge of a fan of, but I still gave it a 4 out of 5 because it is Junji Ito, and some of the stories in this collection are a ton of fun. Two of the characters from one of these stories, are in two different stories, and I think it's like some of the earlier stuff that he'd done, but this one's fun right there. The one with this dude where he's holding his head. He's in two different stories. He's in one where like he won't leave a futon, and then like there's like fungus or whatever like in the futon, and then he's in another one where like he goes to see like a witch or whatever, and like she puts a like a string around his neck, and it continues to tighten and tighten and tighten, and like that right there on his shirt is his blood. And like there's different stories like that, just like super random stories. There's a woman who is like obsessed with this house and becomes like a part of the house. And like yeah, there's just like super random Ito stories in this collection. And one of the craziest stories that Ito's ever done, which is one called Blackbird, is also in this collection. So yeah, if you've never read Blackbird, I'm not going to say anything about it. Please pick up Fragments of Horror, and just even if it's like at the Barnes and Noble or whatever, and just like flip to Blackbird and check out Blackbird, and then tell me that isn't one of the creepiest things you've ever read. I don't think I talked about Ayashimon yet, but I gave this a 5 out of 5. This is the final volume of Ayashimon. It's volume 3, and I pretty much love the series, and it breaks my heart that it's over, that it only lasted for 3 volumes. Yuji Kaku is such an incredible creator, and it breaks my heart that this thing that he put so much love and care and dedication into was only able to go for so long. And when you hit that finale, when you see the end, for me personally, dude, it just crushed me because I really wanted more. I wanted it to keep going. I wanted to see where it was going to go with these characters, with these two right here, with those two characters right there who were our leads, and then these two who are like kind of like tagging along. But unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be, and yeah, it's only 3 volumes. If you want to pick it up, just to own it, I definitely think that it's worth it checking out and seeing how unfortunate it is, that it could have gone for longer. It could have been a bigger series. It just breaks my damn heart, dude. And I'm gonna finish reading his other series, Hell's Paradise, since that did get to go for 13 volumes. I'm gonna read that just in honor of in honor of Yuji Kaku, and unfortunately this failed series, and definitely it breaks my heart. But hey, whatever, man. I still gave it a 5 out of 5. Perfect ending. Wish with all my heart that we could have had more, but hey, it is what it is. Alright, next up we got The Witch and the Night Will Survive. This is also over in 3 volumes. This felt kind of rushed. I think this is kind of like the same situation where these two creators who made the series ran out of time. Like, they set up all this stuff, and then it felt like this final volume was like super duper rushed, like to reach a conclusion. And it does have a conclusion, but I feel like it could have gotten to that point a lot slower, like really built up to it a lot more, because it does feel super rushed. And for me, maybe just because like maybe I just don't have great reading comprehension, but some of the stuff that happened just felt kind of weird. Like, it didn't really make a ton of sense, and then like we're just introduced to like these random characters who I don't know them, and I'm supposed to like care about them or something, or care what happens to them. What I will say, though, is that the art is incredible. This series has some of the most gorgeous artwork that I've ever seen, and I actually kind of want to look into these two creators, who are Dai Chikamoto and Gonde Shinkawa. I want to look into both of these creators and see what other series they've done, especially the artist, Gonde Shinkawa, because the art for this series is amazing, dude. It has some of the most gorgeous artwork that I've ever seen in my life, and I'd love to see what else that creator has made, if he's done anything else, if he's made like his own standalone series, or if he's like drawn for other creators or whatever. But yeah, dude, it does suck that this didn't last for as long as it could have. I gave this a 4 out of 5. It only ran for 3 volumes, unfortunately, but definitely I'd say check it out. Check out the first volume, see how you feel about it. If you want to keep reading it, definitely go ahead, but it does feel kind of rushed. The ending felt kind of rushed, but it did have, a sort of ending. It gave closure for the story, though I feel like it really could have gone for a lot longer. Alright, I'm going to rapid fire these movies since this is a manga channel. Alright, so I want to talk about some movies that I watched, and some of the movies that I watched are, I watched Immaculate. I gave that a 4 out of 5. I watched this Russian movie called V or Vi, whatever. I gave that a 4 out of 5. I also watched Revenge, which is the first film by Coralie Farja. I was calling her Fargiad in my other video, but it's actually Farja or whatever. I think that's what it is, Coralie Farja. If I'm still messing it up, I'm so sorry to anybody who speaks French. I can't French for the life of me. I also watched Eczema. I gave that a 4.5. That is a Korean film that was actually really good. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I also watched Upgrade, which is a Blumhouse movie. I gave that a 4 out of 5. There was supposed to be a part 2, apparently. Or there might be a part 2. I'm not really sure where that's at, because that movie came out a while ago. So honestly, at this point in time, I don't think there's going to be a part 2, but it would have been cool to see one, because it was a ton of fun. I also watched Sisu, which is a movie about a dude in the 1940s that takes out Nazis. So that was pretty good. That was a lot of fun. The movie's a ton of fun to watch this dude just like straight up annihilate Nazis. That was pretty rad. And then also watched Godzilla -1, one of the most heartbreaking things that I've ever watched. Movie legitimately crushed me. I think that movie crushed everybody that watched it, but it was so much fun, dude. It was I don't want to say it was so much fun because it was like super depressing, but it was really good, man. It was a solid film, really well made. I really want to see Shin Godzilla. I bought a copy of it, but apparently it's like a Region B one. I didn't realize it was Region B when I bought it, because it doesn't say that it's Region B. So now I just have like a Region B copy of Shin Godzilla. So now I'm like trying to find a region free like Blu-ray player or whatever, so that I can actually watch the damn movie. Also watched Wolfman, and that was okay. I gave that a 3.5 out of 5. Not a huge fan. Don't know what I was expecting, to be honest. I mean, it is Blumhouse, so like Blumhouse is kind of like hit or miss. Like they'll put out bangers, like Upgrade I think is a banger, and like what was that one with the robot Megan or whatever it was called? That one was okay as well. But then I also really liked Abigail. I thought Abigail was pretty solid. I saw Red Rooms. I gave that a 4.5 out of 5. That's a kind of movie where like you kind of want to go into it without really knowing too much about it. Absolutely insane film. It's like a French Canadian movie, and it's within the genre of like French extreme sorts of movies, but it's not, like just blood and guts everywhere. It's more of like a tense thriller, kind of like a David Fincher sort of film, really taut, really tense, and really well made. It's about red rooms, I guess, if you will, which is like a myth. Red rooms don't actually exist, and red rooms are like a thing where like you can pay to watch people be tortured. It plays up that they do exist, within this world of red rooms. And yeah, it's definitely like a super unsettling film. I remember watching it and just thinking like, damn, dude, the lead in this is an absolute nutcase. But yeah, definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of just like unhinged sorts of movies. I saw The Brutalist. That was a goddamn masterpiece. That is one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. That I gave that a 4.5 out of 5. The only reason I didn't give it a 5 is I wasn't a huge fan of like the last like 5-ish minutes of the film. I feel like they could have ended it a little bit differently than how they did. But overall, I mean, I loved it. It's 3.5 hours. There's like a 15-minute intermission in the middle of it to kind of cut it up, because it is such a gigantic movie. So I kind of like went to the restroom during the intermission, came back and like stretched my legs a little bit, and then just kind of sat down and watched the other half of the film. And I think start to finish, it is one of the most amazing movies that I've ever seen. And it's in my opinion, just like a cinematic marvel, just an absolute masterpiece of a film. And I highly recommend it if you're somebody that is like myself, like just a massive film enjoyer. I think that it is something that is worth going to the cinema. I was probably way out of the cinema at this point, but it's definitely one of those movies that like you have to see in theaters, or at least, now that it's out of theaters, whenever it comes to video, I definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, solid overall cast, characters, the way it's acted, everybody did an incredible job, from the director of the film to Adrian Brody, and I forgot what her name is, that acts opposite him as his wife. And Guy Pearce as well. Guy Pearce just pretty much stole every scene that he was in. But yeah, phenomenal film. And the last movie that I want to talk about is a movie called Presence. I gave that a 4 out of 5. There's a part of it that, in my opinion, didn't make a ton of sense, but I still really loved Presence. I thought it was definitely a subversion to the haunted house genre. Really well done film. Kind of takes the perspective that you usually would see in a haunted house sort of a movie, and kind of shifts it around. I don't want to say what it does, just in case maybe you want to see it and you haven't seen it yet, and you want to go into it blind. But I will say that it is definitely worth taking that ride. I saw it in the packed theater, and I think that a lot of people that watched it all kind of had the same reaction to it, where like you really come to care about the family that's kind of like in the middle of this sort of a haunting. And like I said, I'm not going to say, how it ends or what really happens, but it is kind of like a subversion to the haunted house trope. And who knows, maybe in the future it will inspire a sort of newer generation of filmmakers, and maybe even inspire like kind of like a different way to go about, doing haunted house movies. But hey, who can say? And that's it. That's all I got for you. This is a rewind, January rewind. I'm going to be doing these once a month for the rest of eternity. As long as I'm doing YouTube, I'll be doing monthly rewinds. So this is my first ever monthly rewind. And if you like this whole aesthetic that I'm doing with this, I wanted to change it up. So I'm standing instead of sitting down. Usually I'll sit down and be facing this way, or I'll be facing this way, depending on the kind of video that I'm doing. But I wanted to change it up for these rewinds. And I've been wanting to do this sort of a setup for a while. I just didn't know what to do it with. And it kind of makes sense, like it feels right. Doing it with this monthly rewind, it just feels right to have this sort of a setup. So if you like this and you want to see more videos, maybe like in this me standing sort of format, let me know in the comments. What have you read in January, or what are you currently reading right now in February? Yeah, I'd love to know what you got going on. So please let me know in the comments below. And Take care of yourselves.